You're there in the room? A situation of one device. Get started if everybody's all ready. Okay, with that, I will call to order the Tuesday, April 19th regular meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Centrise Martin to introduce us all to how to participate in this hybrid format meeting and to do a roll call of the board. Centrise.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the members of the board, staff, and public for joining us this evening for the April 19th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend online using the Zoom telemeeting platform, and the main meeting room has been made available for members of the public to attend in person, as well as Supervisor Strickland has joined us in person this evening. If you are joining the Zoom meeting tonight as a member of the public or as an agent to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. And finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Caldwell?
Here.
Ms. Dineni?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Present.
Okay, thank you all. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thanks so much. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to citizens input. This will be for anything that is not on the agenda this evening. And if you'd like to address the board and the public, if you could state your name and your municipality of residence, and please try to keep it to 5 minutes. Thanks. I'm seeing none on the Zoom. Anybody in the room?
Madam Chair, there's no one in the room that has asked to speak.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the April 5th, 2022 Board of Supervisors regular meeting minutes.
This is Patty. I move that we approve the April 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
This is Lisa. I'll second.
Is that a second? Thank you. Second from Tiara. And all in favor?
One minor
Please say aye.
correction.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Yes, ma'am.
At the very end, it's noted that Nick and Centrise had worked on the sound and video improvements in the room, and it says Nick Fugaro. So that just, easy mistake to make, I think. So just a quick correction.
One person could just kind of say it for everybody to be nice, we could all follow that one rule. Adding to what some call.
Lisa, that change is just that last name?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that. Any other corrections? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we move on to special reports. Tonight, we start out with management practices of single-use plastics, presentation by Dr. Laura Fowler. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Laura Fowler is here in the room, and she will be providing us with her presentation, and as we get that started, she'll be approaching the podium to give a presentation this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Guess this is a true test of our hybrid system tonight.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem at all. Thank you for working through it.
Is it not working?
Yes, it doesn't work.
Here, which one would it be? Yeah. Over here?
Can I run it? Or do you need to run it?
No, I can do it.
Okay. There's a fair number of animations, so.
All right, Madam Chair, we're pulling up the presentation at this moment. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all again for your patience, and I will, we have,
Of course.
let's see.
All the licenses. As he's working on pulling it up, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Laura Fowler. I have a joint appointment at Penn State. I'm half between the Penn State School of Law and the Penn State Institutes of Energy and Environment. And they're working on bringing this up. I do think it will actually help walk through because it's a fairly complicated set of information and presentations here. Wanted to thank Ferguson Township actually for the opportunity to be here and present. The last time I actually was here talking about this topic was in 2019. And I'll give you a little bit of history here in a moment. We worked with Ferguson Township both in 2019 and this year as part of Penn State's Sustainable Communities Collaborative Project to really partner with communities who are working on answering questions that they may not have the time or bandwidth to address. And single-use plastics as a question came up in that space. Just waiting for just a minute. Apologies for this.
Just to confirm, right now we're not sharing screen on Zoom.
Correct. Having a technical difficulty here.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Oh. Yep.
Okay. All right. Oh, it's.
Still not showing?
It's okay, we're almost there. Thank you all again for your patience.
There it is.
Okay,
Okay.
full screen. So as I mentioned, this is, oh, I'm picking up maybe an echo here.
Okay.
Okay. I mentioned that this is the part of Penn State's Sustainable Communities Collaborative, which matches community needs with students and opportunities. This semester, I was teaching a negotiation and dispute resolution design course. In that course, I've had 36 students and graduate students, including actually 22 international students and 2 students from the School of International Affairs from 13 different countries. So we've had some actually quite lively discussions about learning about negotiation and designing systems to better manage disputes, and thinking about where they apply in the real world. I think this has been an eye-opening project for the students, particularly my students from all over the world, about how complicated local government is in this area. I'm not quite sure why this semester, but I actually had something like 8 different students from Uzbekistan. So if you can imagine Uzbekistani students coming here and learning about Ferguson Township, Borough State College, and so forth. It's been, I think, an interesting learning experience all the way around. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned earlier that this builds off the 2019 project. We're going to have to kind of work through and just pull up some animations here. In 2018, Ferguson Township residents submitted a petition to Ferguson Township on a ban for single-use plastics, requesting a 25-cent fee at the point of purchase, education, 6 months to implement, and recommendation to partner with the Borough of State College. Pull up a couple more slides. It's a picture of what the petition looked like, and the focus at that time was on single-use plastics. Pull forward a little bit more. There was a hearing in 2018. We worked with Ferguson Township in 2019 to be able to analyze this question at that time. Pull up a couple more. In 2019, however, just as we were presenting our final results, there was a ban on ban that actually came through as part of a budgetary hearing. So Ferguson Township basically and other communities put a hold on further use or further implementation at that time. Keep going. So this particular project is looking at a couple different things. Working assumptions that we're working under. Number one, we were hearing from a lot of different entities that there was a need for more of a regional solution versus one community at a time. Second question that came up, and the working assumption we were working under this time, pull up the next slide, is that this needed to be perhaps about something more than just single-use plastic bags. And so question is, pull up one more animation, is it something like grocery bags, straws, stir sticks, 6-pack rings, plastic cutlery, or take-home containers? Could be a little bit more broad. So a lot has changed since 2019. There's the statewide moratorium ended. There has been other communities in Pennsylvania taking action. Philadelphia, for example, and Pittsburgh actually just enacted an ordinance last week. Very fresh news out of that. A lot of understanding from impacts, both local to global and all the way back. Here in State College, there was an article earlier this year about the presence of microplastics in all of our local streams. There was also recognition of the impacts of waste and waste management as part of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan adopted by the Council of Governments fairly recently. Our role in this project, I think, and want to emphasize what we were trying to do as a class versus what the role of the communities is in this class. So our goal was to research and provide some background information, conduct interviews, pull up a few more. Sorry, I animated this for me to run, not for somebody else to run. It's okay. And share information back with the local communities, trying to address the questions of how have others addressed the question of single-use plastics? Who is potentially interested in this region? What are their interests and concerns? What could be considered here in this area? And then really it's your role to figure out what you want to do. So we're here sharing information. We are not suggesting anything. It was just a matter of providing information. One more animation on that. This is what we're trying to do here, and this is what I'm reporting back on. We will actually talk, working on setting up a meeting with with Patton Township, and we're scheduled to talk with Borough State College in a couple weeks. Next. So one option that has taken place elsewhere and is already taking place here is a voluntary approach, right? That there are numerous local stores, for example, Wiskoy, that doesn't use or buy bags at all, and voluntarily will actually collect bags and reuse them. Some Entities like Trader Joe's just use paper bags. Aldi's already, as corporate mechanism, charges a fee. There's a lot of other programs. Penn State has had what's called the Eco Coin program, where if you don't take a plastic bag, you can make a donation to a jurisdiction, and that's been seen to actually reduce the number of plastic bags. So one option. Next slide. Second option, charge a fee on any bag. The fees, in looking at a lot of the literature, range from 5 cents to 20 cents. I know that the original Ferguson Township proposal had been 25 cents. Actually did not see a fee that high anywhere in the US. I think it had been imposed in Ireland, but not here. There may be standards that show that, but a lot of ideas on how one could do that. Could you create a forum where retailers all voluntarily agree upon a fee? Can you impose an ordinance where retailers agree on a fee within a certain range? Impose the same fee for all of the retailers? Impose an ordinance where you increase it based on the number of bags? Something like this was modeled in the European Union. So lots of opportunities all the way through. People have basically said there's a real need for education, including at the point of sale. So this is an example of what that would look like. Third option, prohibit certain products one way or another. So a lot of bag bans is what they're often called, have often actually resulted from community action. Many were implemented by a town vote, a committee, or local legislation of some sort. There are now 10 states as of May, just coming right up, including California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, and New Jersey. 18 states, on the other hand, have a ban on bans, basically limiting local action, preempting local action. A lot of countries have done this. Bangladesh, interestingly enough, enacted a ban on bags in 2002, and most recently Canada as a whole country just enacted this kind of action. There's a whole range of what's regulated. Again, it kind of gave you a snapshot of that. This is a helpful footprint of what is, this is a static shot, but you can go in and explore. The other place that's interesting to take a look at, pull up the next, the National Conferences of State Legislatures has a pretty detailed look at what each state has done and links to all of their ordinances. Fourth option is a combination. Washington State, for example, just basically said no single-use plastic carryout bags. We're going to charge a fee payable to the retailer for recyclable paper bags or thick plastic carryout bags. And then they made it optional as to whether a retailer might want to charge a fee for a recyclable or compostable bag one way or another. So an option. Next. Considerations for this region. There's a variety of them, and this has come from talking with folks at the Center Waste Authority as well as the Council of Government. And I double-checked these statistics with them. Go ahead and pull up. Plastics are very much part of our local waste stream here. We have 18 tractor trailers a day taking garbage from here to the Elk County landfill. About 50% of our waste stream are recyclable materials. Separate plastics collections, we do have them. You can see the picture in the lower left of the bright red where you can put your single-use plastics in there. They are then separated out by different types. The plastics recycling as a whole is much more challenging after 2017 when China basically said, look, we're tired of collecting your plastics that we don't know what to do with. A lot of them are contaminated, we're not taking them. The market is still very much evolving, but it's a tougher market. Some products have no market at all, like styrofoam, they're simply garbage. Plastic bags can be recycled, however, about 87% of bags are not recycled, and we have about 32 billion pounds of plastic film produced in the United States. Not just plastic bags, but film in general of a variety of sorts, like packaging and so forth. There is an effort to create an updated waste characterization study for Pennsylvania. The most recent statewide study was done in 2003. These results are not yet out. So waiting to see what that looks like. That waste characterization was done over the last couple years, including here in Center County. So we don't have those results yet. Here, I don't need to tell you this, but there's a lot of action that has taken place here in Ferguson Township of helping lead this forward. The Borough of State College has also been looking at this in moving a resolution forward saying, yes, we should do something. It started to come up in Patton Township. And so you can see kind of the coverage, more recent coverage of what the local communities are doing. We did reach out to other jurisdictions like College Township, and they're like, yeah, we've started to talk about it, but we haven't necessarily moved it forward. What's happening, for example, in Ferguson Township? So, students did a lot of research. We looked at 37 different jurisdictions. I asked them to summarize each jurisdiction they looked at in 2 to 3 pages. We will give that back to you as part of our report. So this is the information that we were seeking: jurisdiction, what action was taken, the definition of what they were regulating, any exemptions, the transition or implementation of their program, how that's operated, what impact COVID had, and then anything else that kind of caught their attention. We researched a lot of different jurisdictions in Pennsylvania, a range of cities, a range of states, a range of countries, and a number of businesses. We'll tell you that, again, we're going to include short summaries so you can go in and see what each of those jurisdictions did, and a link to the ordinances, for example. So one key question that I gave you is, what is regulated? Examples could be single-use plastic bags, sometimes defined by weight or whether they have a handle, non-recyclable paper bags at the point of sale, single-use serviceware, meaning utensils, plastic straws or stirrers, expanded polystyrene, meaning styrofoam, plastic rain carriers, and interestingly enough, Hawaii is actually considering outlawing single-use plastic bags. A couple of examples here. This is a definition, just so you can kind of see what some of these definitions look like. This is for Philadelphia. It's by weight of bag, and it was a combination of both a ban on single-use plastic bags plus a fee. This is a longer definition on polystyrene. These get pretty complicated, but I wanted to give you a couple example definitions of how other communities have handled this. Next. Who is regulated? How do you actually approach this? So for example, there could be retailers and or restaurants by type of store. Say a convenience store, this is actually the definition from Pittsburgh: convenience stores, grocery stores, restaurants, delivery services, but not dry cleaners or pharmacies. Sometimes it's defined by size, above 10,000, retail of more than 2 million a year. It's very much definitionally oriented, what we've seen in these ordinances. The point of sale can be quite broadly defined. That's an example from Lewisboro, New York, where it gets even to flea markets. The exemptions, there are exemptions by type of user. For example, if somebody is receiving federal program assistance through the SNAP program or the Women, Infant, and Child, WIC program, or state programs, there are often exemptions written into law for that. And then often also the opportunity that somebody can come in and say, hey, we have no other reasonable alternative to a plastic bag, please allow us to use it. Or we need additional time to use up existing stock. We can apply for an exemption. Keep going. So, long list of potential exemptions of what is covered. Hawaii actually had a pretty long list. So go ahead and just pull all of these up. Maybe it's a bag by a customer for loose items like fruit and vegetables, or frozen food, meat, fish, flowers. Beverages, restaurants here, this is Hawaii allows for some of this kind of plastics. Pharmacists, newspaper bags, door hanger bags. You see the laundry, dry cleaning, or garment bags. Bags sold containing multiple bags for garbage, pet waste, or yard waste. A couple more exemptions here. Live animals like fish, you go to a store and buy a fish. You can use a plastic bag for that. Transport chemicals or so forth. So this is Hawaii's set of exemptions, but most laws have some variety of exemptions where single-use plastic is allowed. Program implementation. Again, I'm going quickly because I'm kind of covering a lot of material, so I will share these slides with you afterwards. Some places started with a fee and then went to a ban. Others went to a ban and then added a fee. There's been a whole combination of different things and a lot of experimentation across the United States. Usually there's phased in over time, ranging from about 6 months to 18 months, in part to allow communities time to use up the existing stock of what they have on hand. An example from Vermont of what you can see there. A lot of education programs and outreach and trying to acculturate this program and be able to implement something. Usually requires some sort of signage. The next piece of this will show you what that sign looks like. This is for the city of Davis, California. So you can see sort of, hey, this is what's allowed, this is what's not. Here are the exemptions in kind of as clear signage as possible. If a fee is charged, it's often required that it is charged separately on a receipt so you can see what that looks like. And there's a lot of difference between whether that fee is always returned to the retailer or a mix. Washington, D.C., for example, puts some of its fee and funding towards the Anacostia River cleanup. So it's very much decided jurisdiction by jurisdiction what happens with the fee. Enforcement, another question. Often there's a huge range in fines for failure to enforce, usually against the businesses. California might be the highest at $5,000 a day for a third or subsequent violations. I have an example from DC that's a little bit, gives you an example of what happens. Somebody comes in and inspects a business. If there's a violation, they must come into compliance. If they don't come into compliance, they get a notice of a violation that can then escalate. And you can see what the sort of fee range there is. There's also compliance and audits for the receipt of those tax funds or the fee. COVID impacts, I'll come back to that because there were a lot of COVID impacts. A lot of people rolled back their programs basically saying, hey, because of concern about how COVID-19 spread, we're gonna revert to allowing the use of single-use plastics. And there were a lot of impacts here locally as well. So the impact of the laws, depending on how the law was set up, that's a big asterisk. Measurable reduction of waste plastics in waste stream, in waterways, and as litter. And what I would recommend, pull up a couple of different things here, is that there's actually here a link to the effectiveness of plastic regulations and links to the studies that have been done. This is an early enactment by San Francisco where they basically enacted a ban but no fee, and the unintended consequence was people started using thicker bags. So at the point of sale, people were like, well, here's a thicker bag. It's not subject to the bag ban, and they actually saw the amount of plastics increase, not decrease. So people are saying that there's basically a second generation of bag approach. The city of Chicago had a ban and then enacted a fee of 7 cents, and when they did that, overall bag use dropped quite a bit. Same thing, one more, Suffolk County, New York, and it's a little hard to read, but see some statistics where they really saw 1.1 billion fewer plastic bags used over their period of study. It's a pretty exhaustive study, and it's interesting to look at. Their fee was 5 cents for comparison. A lot of unintended consequences, I mentioned that. The Surfrider Foundation actually has a toolkit for communities considering adopting something to manage single-use plastics, and they document some of these unintended consequences. So again, a ban without a fee can increase plastic use, counterintuitively. Ban plus a fee on recyclable or thicker bags had more of an impact than just either of those by themselves. Smaller fees may be less effective. Washington, D.C. has struggled a little bit with their 5-cent fee. The Surfrider Foundation recommends 10 cents at least. Litigation can result. New York actually just had a whole lawsuit that was just settled, recently dismissed, and their statewide ban actually went forward. And then one community or state action can actually allow things to go forward sooner. I think we just actually saw last week in the news that Wegmans announced that they are getting rid of all single-use plastic bags, I think in part because they're based in New York and New York just banned them. So one more picture here. You can see this picture, I think, from last week. Wegmans supermarkets, by the end of this year, will have no more single-use plastics. That's a change that's already happening. Nobody has required it, but I think it's an outshoot of what happened in New York. And that actually came from the local communities in New York saying we can do this, then the statewide action took place. So student interviews, just roll through this. Here are sample questions. We were trying to broadly ask, what are your perspectives on single-use plastics? Do you use or manage them in your workplace? If so, how? Do you have thoughts on how they should be managed? Have you seen impacts from COVID? Is there anything else you'd like to share with local elected officials? And is there anybody else we should talk to? We were very much trying not to skew the interviews one way or another. And we talked with a broad range of folks. So you can pull up another one. Local government officials, county government officials, managers, staff, local utilities, businesses, retail, restaurants, gyms, apartment managers, Penn State, waste management, procurement, local environmental groups, international perspectives, and then interested individuals, including students. We've reached out to about 70 people. We've got about 35 interviews. A number of people declined to be interviewed, a number of people didn't respond. So my students are actually still interviewing people. They have more interviews set up. We're working on this. I don't have all the results back, but the results are interesting. And so I want to give you a snapshot of some of what we saw, and then I'll stop and take questions. My caveat, this is not a scientific survey. We're just trying to get a sense of what was on people's minds. So wide range of perspectives. There's somewhat wide recognition that this is a problem and we need to be dealing with. Some people hadn't thought about it at all. Others know there's a problem and don't know what to do. Others basically are like, we should have done something yesterday. Why haven't we enacted anything on this? And others are like, we need some more time for education and study. Some would like more education and voluntary measures. Others want to see a fee or abandon a fee, a combination of things. Even though for those who want to see something done, there's a recognition that there are trade-offs in that, right? Concerns about costs and effectiveness of replacements. And I like this quote from one of our interviewees. Good news is my students have done the interviews. I cannot tell you who any of these quotes are from, protecting anonymity here. But what started out as a convenience has turned into a pollution and economic issue. It is so ingrained in our society that moving away from those habits is very hard. Education came up time and time again in most of the interviews. So about the impacts of plastic, that these are long lasting from cradle to grave, fossil fuels all the way through to disposal. A lot of impacts locally to wildlife to globally in the oceans. Impacts on personal health from leaching of containers to ingesting microplastics. The concern about lack of markets, that if plastics are recycled, they're downcycled, meaning they don't accrue in value, but they're downcycled through that. And again, a quote that we're all dependent on this and we're dependent on the environment. Alternatives, lots of questions about that. I actually have 2 slides on that. I ended up splitting it out because lots of conversation came up about that. About any new program, there's a need for education. You can't just start a program without educating the community. Why are we regulating certain plastics or managing them? What do I as a retailer or business need to do? How does a change impact, for example, a poorer population? Does it impact jobs in the area and their jobs? What's the effect of the program over time? Range of interests and needs. So questions like, who is interested in this? And I'm not going to read all this because there's quite a few. Enacting a program, we need to think about different audiences. Consumers, a range of those. Businesses, how do we deal with that? Attendees at something like an event who may not know what the policy is in a local area. And again, more detail than I want to read through. There is a need for regional integrated approach. I would say we heard that from a variety of different people. If some jurisdictions went ahead and adopted, others would follow along. Others basically said within an organization there's a need for integration. The top needs to support what the staff are doing and vice versa. Others said basically if you adopt a regulation, we'll comply. Just tell us what we need to do. A lot of people said we want to see more than just a plastic bag. We think that there's easy alternatives to things like plastic straws and stirrers. That's a no-brainer. Others basically said, other issues like plastic or styrofoam containers may be a little bit more challenging. We'd love to see them biodegradable, but cost may be a factor. And I'll come back to that theme a little bit. Some alternatives. I'm sorry, the text on this is a little small. Lots of questions about biodegradable products, but also questions about that cost and the trade-off. How do we help understand it if we don't also provide some alternatives to what you can use? Plastics are convenient. What else can we use and at what cost? Can we get a better product? So for example, if I've got a paper bag and it rips in the rain, that's problematic. Is there something else? Frontline managers, again, may have some ideas, but they need to follow what their management is telling them to do. Next slide. Question about incentives. Can it be from a range all the way at the manufacturing side so that we're getting less plastics in at the first place? To incentives for businesses to implement good practices, that we're recognizing what they're doing in that space. To consumers who might want incentives or alternatives to use something different. Maybe they use a recyclable or a reusable package that they get a discount of some sort. Some local perspectives and questions. I just give you some snapshots of some of what we heard. So for a local restaurant, I understand that we're trying to do this. We use styrofoam. We've heard from our customers that this is an interest. COVID has come up, and oh, by the way, we're trying to open another restaurant. So this isn't the first thing on our mind, but we're open to thinking about it. Next. A local retailer, again, not really thinking about it, but know and have seen a change in behavior from our customers over the last 3 to 4 years. This is new. Next. A fee, questions about this. You know, if you're charged, who pays? Is it the retailer? Is it the customer? How does that work? Question that's come up from some of our local businesses. Questions of transition and enforcement. Again, back to the education theme, the recognition that education is needed, that we need to engage with both business owners and the public about what's best, thinking about partnering for systematic change in this space. Couple months, at least to use up, I mean, what's the transition? You see some quotes about that. You know, somebody said, I'm open to doing anything that would help merchants adjust. If you enact a ban, you need a transition and you need clear instructions on what's expected. Once enacted, you'd have to think about enforcement. People have said staffing is already a challenge, and it may be helpful to have local sustainability officials reaching out and really working with that education side of things. COVID, lots of impacts with COVID. You guys probably can guess what most of these are, right? Less emphasis on managing plastics. This is not the first thing on our mind right now. A lot of volume of single-use plastics, including personal protection and equipment. Somebody noted that if masks count as single-use plastics, whether they do or not, who knows, but it looked like leaves in a parking lot that there were so many. Higher usage of it for groceries, lack of water stations, you name it. More takeout orders, and even interestingly enough, supply chain issues, not only in getting plastic bags, but paper bags, such that plastic bags were cheaper. That was an unexpected piece of information, I think, that came up. Phased out plastic bags prior to COVID, but had to bring them back due to COVID and concern about how the virus might be transmitted. Waste management, again, key theme that came up in a variety of areas. If you increase recycling and decrease waste stream, can you get a rebate from the state and improve that? Again, it links to some of the other questions that I think are in front of local communities. Questions about, can you really reuse plastic bags or what happens to them? You know, some pushback. One of my students interviewed an apartment manager, and he basically was like, yeah, students may say they want to do this, but we're seeing the implementation side and it doesn't work. How do we actually get better compliance with what we're trying to do, which is be pretty conscious, but we're cleaning up messes. County does a good job managing plastics overall, but not all types of plastics can be reused or recycled. Decreased trash, less profit. A couple different people basically said, best way to deal with this is not have it come into the waste stream in the first place. How do we reduce, reuse, and recycle with emphasis on the reduce? Sample responses, just a couple more slides and I'll stop. You know, concern about environment and single-use plastics locally and globally, huge increase in the amount of plastics globally and locally, and concern about the human health impacts that I already talked about. Some sample responses from businesses. Interestingly enough, Penn State Dining Service, a couple students actually work there and I think had a chance to talk to their supervisors to say, hey, you know, what are we seeing here within the dining services? A lot of use of single-use plastics, can only recycle a couple types, but if there was more compostable, then we'd need the facilities to actually work with that. A local restaurant, again, you know, sort of there's opportunities for other alternatives. I had this slide earlier. Keep going. So a couple different, and then actually quite a conversation with different local government representatives. So people are saying, hey, we're on board with some of these, thinking about alternatives. Plastic bag management be a good thing, but maybe it should be broader. Want to see a more regional approach. Somebody said this is actually a small area. Want to see more systematic change in the community for sustainable options. Plastic is useful. It can be useful for things like small trash or picking up pet waste. Should there be exemptions? Somebody else recommended avoiding using the word ban if you do prohibit certain products, that may be inflammatory. I tried to work my way around it, and I ended up using the bag ban just because it's shorter. But mentioned from the Council of Governments that they could be approached as helping develop a sample ordinance. We're working, again, in that coordinated fashion. The thought of grocery stores, you know, can we work with them to help build cooperative programs? Branding, marketing, education, outreach, all of these things are really important. How do we have a level playing field between local stores and big retailers? So lots and lots of perspectives. This is not everything that we have heard, working on distilling that for the final report. So what's next? We are still gathering final information. We're sharing it, one more click here. we're basically going to shortly hand this off to you to say, it's up to you to figure out what you want to do. We are not making a recommendation one way or another. I will give you a quick summary, though, of some of what we're seeing and then our final action steps. So overall summary, there has been a very big shift since 2019 in people handling and managing this question. There's a lot of change at all levels, and there's actually an international treaty being considered right now. So internationally, this has a lot of attention. There is tremendous interest in doing something. Adopting small changes, again, community by community, can lead to bigger changes. Or adopting, say, a single-use plastic bag ban can lead to other actions later. Seen that in multiple different instances. There is a lot of really great information for how other jurisdictions have handled this, and we recommend looking at some of those other resources. And no matter what you do, education and outreach, I think, seems to be a really critical point that a lot of people reiterated. One final thing here for us, again, we're finalizing interviews, working on the summary report. We'll be sharing a poster next week at the Sustainable Communities Collaborative Outreach, I think on the 25th or 27th. Can get the exact date to you, and we will be reaching out and briefing other communities. For sure, Borough State College, that's scheduled, Patton Township working on scheduling, and other communities as they're interested. So that's kind of where we are. Appreciate the opportunity to work on this. That was a lot of information, and I welcome questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fowler. That was a lot of really good information. Really appreciate that. Let's take just a quick minute or two for questions. We are going to be following up on this topic, so we haven't heard the last of it. But let's take a moment or two for questions before we move on. Anyone have any questions? Looks like no questions. Again, a big thank you. There's a lot to dive into. I really perked up on a lot of those suggestions, and so we'll schedule a board discussion on next steps in one of the upcoming meetings, if everybody's amenable to that. Okay, all right, great. Thanks so much, Dr. Fowler.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to your students.
I will pass that on to them.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the Refuse and Recycling Pilot Program presentation by Mr. Eric Norenberg, Executive Director of COG.
Great, and Shelley Motto is with me tonight. She's participating remotely, so if she could be able to share her screen, well, there's the presentation, and away we go. So this was fascinating hearing the presentation from Dr. Fowler, because I was one of the folks that was interviewed, and so this was a lot of helpful information, and we'd like to talk briefly with you about the pilot for an earlier start time for refuse and recycling coming this summer. Talk to you a little bit about the history, why the change is being made, how we're going to evaluate it, what will happen during the pilot, and so on. So the basic specifics of the pilot are that we will have collection begin at 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So the Tuesday right after Memorial Day, this will start, and end the Friday before Labor Day. This will cover both refuse and recycling. And during the whole pilot period, we will be gathering feedback, information, results, and any concerns or problems that crop up. We are going to get a lot of information out to the public, and we will be engaging in press announcements. We have already worked with the townships to make sure that we get this information into the newsletters that are coming out or have come out. Waste Management will do phone and email blasts. They have a substantial portion of their customer base that is in their email system now, and then we will also use press releases and social media. So I'd like Shelley to cover on the next few slides some of the background and history for this and how this was first requested in 2019. So go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, we really started the conversation about this in 2019 when the haulers made a request to the COG to start collection at 6 a.m. It came to the Public Services and Environmental Committee that October. They asked for more information, and when they looked at it again in November and asked then, they did vote on it, but they asked to revisit early in 2020 after they had had time to discuss it with their municipalities. In February, they discussed it again, and in March, they voted 2-2, so it did not move forward. But they did at that time want to revisit it in a year or two. We didn't revisit it until this year. Obviously, the pandemic changed a lot of things. In the meantime, both summers, they asked for an earlier start time during weeks when it was predicted to have a very high heat index weeks. But the COG executive director denied those requests because it wasn't time to get the information out to residents in a timely manner, so that we knew there'd be a lot of missed collections if we did that. So February, the haulers again made a request to visit this with the COG. The COG solicitor reviewed the contract and determined it to be an administrative decision. The executive director requested feedback from the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee that now oversees the contract, and then made the decision to approve the pilot. Okay, just a very brief information on why the haulers have asked to do this. The first is that there is more trash and more recycling during the hotter months. As you can see here, June, July, and August have some of the highest tonnages, and so they're working harder when it's hotter. Second is that not only is it hotter in the summer, obviously, but that it's become much hotter than usual. In 2020, there were 35 days where the highest temperatures reached over 90. The average for central Pennsylvania is 21. In 2021, there were 32 such days. So again, we're seeing much higher temperatures in the last few years. Also, an earlier start time addresses several issues. Most of those are complete the collection on time. So it allows workers to begin the collection earlier in the day and finish earlier, hopefully. Our highest temperatures, as you can see from the graph, are from 3 to 5 p.m. It also provides additional time for the drivers to take breaks if needed. The reason we can't take more time at the end of the day is because everything has to be delivered before 4 p.m. to the transfer station. And then finally, it provides extra time in there if a worker does experience heat exhaustion. We have to get someone else there. They have to get someone else there to take over. And they're just, that delays everything even more. And so it provides a little bit of extra. Some routes will get finished and they can go help finish routes that are falling behind. Finally, we wanted to look specifically at Ferguson for you. The red, you can see that Thursday is the green area and Friday is the blue. The red circles indicate where the first about hour and a half of the day occurs. And so in January of 2020, when the Ferguson Board of Supervisors discussed this at their board meeting, they voted and approved an earlier start time every summer, but they asked at that time for some consideration to be given that the routes don't begin in the most rural parts of the township. And so we wanted to show you where those routes actually do begin on Thursdays and Fridays. Okay, Mr. Nordenberg, we'll take it over again.
So one of the things we're committed to is tracking the impacts and tracking the results of the pilot. So we're going to compile all of the calls. We've already received some questions and comments, but we'll take all calls and emails, we'll track, and we'll categorize by different types of calls and questions, whether they come in to our office, to Waste Management, to the Refuse and Recycling Authority, as well as municipalities. We do anticipate that there may be some problems with trash that's put out the night before. So in discussing this with Waste Management, one of their supervisors went out on April 1st and did a quick survey and found that 65% had their trash out by 4:30 in the morning already. So many people are doing that as part of their normal routine, so we hope this won't become an adverse impact for them. We're also encouraging use of cans for collection as opposed to plastic bags. As bags can be penetrated and trash scattered, whether it's big animals or small animals or birds. But we do have a commitment from the refuse collector, Waste Management, to see that if animals do get into the bags and do make a mess, that the mess will be cleaned up. As part of the pilot, we're going to make sure that that gets taken care of. If there are any noise complaints, we'll monitor that as well and track and identify those and look at how we can adapt later on. One of the things that had come up during the past winter had to do with some of the routes that were difficult to address and serve early in the morning due to some of the snow plowing schedules and other implications. So we hope we can use the data from this pilot this summer as well as some of the data from winter collections and see if there can be adjustments to routes that will be beneficial in both seasons. So finally, we will be doing a resident survey in a year or so as we get ready to renew the contract. And so all of the feedback from this pilot will go into that. And again, this is a pilot. We plan to do this for this summer only and make an assessment and evaluation in the September-October timeframe once we have all of the feedback gathered and we're able to assess the impacts and assess how we've been able to address those impacts. So thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your time and for the presentation. Does anyone have a question? Patty.
Thank you. I do have a question about this survey. Did you say, is the survey going out to all residents or are you doing just a sample?
Shelley, you're muted.
So our contract goes through 2025. In 2023, our plan originally was in 2023, we would do a survey of all residents as we begin to prepare for that next contract round. So we would survey everyone on every part of both aspects of the contract, refuse and recycling. And we would have done that at some point in 2023 or 2022, but we will, or 2023, but we will roll that earlier so that we have that data to make a decision about this start time pilot. If the pilot goes well, otherwise, then we will move that survey forward. It would go to everyone, but we would ask about the start time specifically too.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Others? I have just a comment or two. So I'm disappointed because there was no accommodation for the request that the more rural areas of Ferguson Township that are on that first earliest collection, that those routes were not in any way, as far as I understand, and based on reports of residents, that was not in any way adjusted or is not, I'll say, at the current plan, there is no current plan to do any adjustment to shift that early pickup away from the rural areas. And I'll note that 65% in the survey done by the company that is asking for the change, it's not necessarily representative of accuracy. And it still is really a significant portion of folks that are going to be affected, that are really going to have to accommodate for this change. I mean, that the alternatives, they really were not explored. For example, other alternatives that were talked about is that company really could afford, based on a $12 million CEO annual salary during a pandemic, could afford, additional trucks and additional workers to shorten that workday. So if we're talking about concern about workers' health, workers' rights, workers' pay, compensation, there are other alternatives that we could have, as elected officials, really pushed back against to hold, that company accountable in that manner, while advocating for our residents. So I really want to continue to advocate for you to be an advocate, please, for our residents, for before that pilot begins, to just make some minor changes in the routes to shift away from those really highly bear populated areas. And I don't know if you've been following it, but bear are very active this year. It's not a great year to start that pilot. There's significant activity even in the more urban areas, frankly. So I have significant concern about this, and I would encourage you to at least look at reducing the impact on the rural population. And we have had some preliminary feedback on our form that we provided on our Ferguson website when we became concerned about this after learning that it was moving forward without that accommodation. And although not everyone is concerned that has replied, I would say a significant number of folks are. So I'll just lift up their voices and ask you just to consider that, if you might, in your concern for the workers in the heat. And then lastly, and probably, I'm not going to say more importantly, everything is important really in government decisions like this, but I'm very concerned about how we're going to choose to adapt to climate change, because are we setting a precedent here? And I know that we did get a solicitor opinion on whether the executive director had the authority to act unilaterally in making this decision, but I don't think that we got a solicitor's opinion on whether this would set a precedent for individuals like, I'll say, contracting companies say that pave our roads and also work during the heat of the day. Will this set a precedent, for those individuals? Will we have to accommodate everyone if we accommodate for this? So that is my only question. So this comment before, please consider. And my question is, did we get that opinion from the solicitor about the potential for this setting a precedent that would really maybe negatively impact the quality of life of our residents in a way we're not really prepared to manage at this point?
So thank you. We appreciate the feedback, and I think Shelley's demonstrated a really high degree of representing the needs and concerns of our customers and residents throughout the past year as waste management transitioned from advanced disposal to waste management's operation. So I give a shout out to Shelley for that, and she's continuing to try to hold waste management to a high standard of customer service, and will continue to try to address the concerns that you raised, Madam Chair. But in response to the final question you asked, the solicitor and I discussed, and he had reviewed the contract specific to the refuse pickup, not all contracts, not all services, not all operations. But I can tell you, having lived in and worked in a number of states and areas where summer heat is an issue in a variety of work situations, both municipal employees and contract employees in a number of areas in the summer do request and do get accommodation to start projects and other sorts of operations earlier during summer months because of the heat issues, depending on the type of work they're doing, whether it's paving or refuse collection. It's a pretty typical thing. But we are trying to make sure we are taking into account local needs and local concerns. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it has not yet been typical to this area, so this would be first for that. Patty?
I did have another question to ask. Is there any way that waste management, one of the things you had talked about were folks that leave their just bags out, and that happens a lot in my neighborhood as well. Is there any way to sort of get discounted waste management bins or something that could be issued and charged to residents should they request them or something? Do you know what I mean?
I think we certainly do know what you mean. Shelley can give you more of the background, but one of the strategies that was part of the last bid for trash collection service was to use the cart system and automated collection vehicles, which is becoming more and more common. It is better for the employees. It's more efficient, and there are a number of advantages. However, in the last bid, this was going to be much more costly to the residents in the area. And so the decision was made not to make that change. But that is a potential strategy to address the potential issues with animals and to create more better safety conditions for employees, as well as more efficient operations. So that is something Shelley is continuing to discuss with Waste Management.
Right, the container system is really not something that Western Ferguson Township wants to entertain, especially since it's much more costly and there's storage issues. I am familiar with customers of that service. Also, I think they do single stream recycling, but anyway, another conversation for sure. But my question is based on Patty's. Don't we by ordinance mandate that individuals have their garbage contained in a hard-sided vessel? Isn't that part of our ordinance?
The ordinance is that it's contained in there prior to collection. It does not say it needs to be placed out for collection in that receptacle, but it doesn't say it doesn't. That's a very gray area of that ordinance. So it does say the storage on your property must be containerized, but it's not clearly stated that it must be containerized when it's placed out for collection.
So that sounds like an us problem that we need to modify our ordinance. So I guess put that on the list, right? Right. So
our list is growing, Laura.
It's growing. I know. It's on the list. Okay. So speaking of the list, plenty to do tonight. So thank you so much for your time and your continued diligence to try to maybe get those routes a little bit rearranged for us. So thank you. All right. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and move on to our Climate Action Committee presentation. Ms. Brandy Robinson is with us this evening to present. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Let's see if I can fire up my presentation on the correct screen. Let's give it a go. All right. Hold on. Sorry, I've just returned to my office and now my Zoom setup is all different than it was at home. So let's see here. Can you see my presentation and only my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, we're in business. Well, thank you everyone for having me tonight. I'm Brandy Robinson. I've been chairing the Ferguson Township Climate Action Committee for the last couple of years, and I'm happy to report that I am here to wrap things up for this first big milestone of climate action in our township. Okay, so I realize that many of you know the history, but there are some folks with us who weren't around for this, so I'm just gonna take a quick minute to let you all know how this work started. So when we kicked off our efforts for the Climate Action Committee with this 2017 resolution, this is sort of where our journey began. And so there were really three main focuses: reducing emissions to net zero by 2050 or sooner for the township, providing leadership within our region on this effort, and then engaging peer governments, non-governmental organizations, and other entities across the region to not only raise awareness, but also identify and implement courses of action. So far, I think Ferguson has been making pretty good progress on achieving these goals, but now we need to think about how we maintain this momentum and build upon it further if we're really going to hit that net zero goal by 2050. And when I visited with you all in October of 2021, I told you that by April, our committee would provide you with a set of tailored recommendations to do just that. And so I'm here to discuss those findings. Okay, so I think it's important to recognize that our work is now happening within a broader context of the Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. When we kicked things off, there wasn't really anything going on at the region. The borough had some sustainability initiatives, and there were some other things scattered throughout some of the other townships, but really no concerted effort to reduce emissions and respond to a changing climate. It wasn't that long after our committee started its work that the Center Region Council of Governments created this dedicated sustainability planner position, which Pam Adams now occupies. And the whole goal of this is to address climate change mitigation and adaptation right here in the Center Region. So since that time, we have really tried to dovetail the Ferguson-based Climate Action Committee work with what Pam has been leading in the regional level to make sure that these efforts are complementary, supportive of one another, and work nicely together. So I just wanted to, contextualize that the discussion that we're about to have about Ferguson-related stuff is happening within this greater regional effort as well. So in 2021, the General Forum approves this 80% reduction of regional emissions by 2050, with an interim target of 45% reductions by 2030. The efforts there are focusing on reducing impacts and adapting to the changes that we're inevitably going to experience, and emphasizing education, partnerships, and policy as the means to get these things done. Here in Ferguson, we make up a little more than a quarter of the emissions for our region. So it makes sense that we should try to serve in a leadership role to pull those emissions down. So, again, I know some of you have seen me trot this slide out more than once, but one last time. I think it's important to remember where our emissions are coming from. And this is a snapshot of the emissions inventory that we did for the year 2016, which was completed in the 2018-2019 timeframe. And what I really want you to think about here are the biggest pieces of our emissions pie. We've got residential energy, transportation, and commercial energy. So not only are these our biggest emission sources, but then that also makes them our biggest opportunity for emissions reduction. This is good news for us because often the emissions reductions that you see in these sectors result in serious cost savings and have attractive payback periods for implementing those measures. Okay, so this is how the Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan breaks things out by sector. And I think that this is a useful suite of options that is presented within the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that was passed at the end of last year to help us both reduce emissions and build our climate resiliency. And so there are over 80 recommended actions across these 6 emission sectors in the regional plan. And so our recommendations for Ferguson, focusing again on those biggest pieces of our emissions pie, energy and transport, are through partnerships with residents and the businesses in our community to incentivize efficiency gains, prioritizing education and outreach, and finally providing incentives as we work to try to build community support for some of the longer term, bigger picture efforts that we will need. Additionally, we've included some policy recommendations as well. So we kind of treated, and I think I mentioned this in October, we treated the regional plan as a menu from which we could go and choose a la carte the things that we thought would be the best fit for Ferguson Township specific actions. Okay. Okay. So prior to this meeting, I included 2 documents. One was our full recommendations by sector, and one was our summary recommendations. So I just wanted to take a minute to walk through our thinking and what you will find in those documents. I'm not really going to go through all the details of all the recommendations because, for example, this full recommendations document is a 17-page long table, such as this snapshot of transportation that I gave. So we would be here all night. But I wanted to talk to you about how we set it up and why. So in this left-handmost column, we have the recommended actions that come right from the Center Regions Plan. So we've listed them all. And then in the middle column, we've indicated whether or not we think that particular recommendation is a good fit for township level action. Some of them, prioritizing it at the township level makes more sense than regionally. Some of it should instead be handled regionally instead of the township. And then finally, some of them fell somewhere in the middle. So we tried to indicate, how good of a fit basically we thought it was for township level actions to help you all prioritize where you go from here. And then finally, over here on the right is where we provided specific recommended actions in service to reaching those recommendations in the left-hand column. And we also tried to add in some notations about areas where we thought you might need some sort of accommodation or modification to those things. So you can kind of treat this as an annotated to-do list. And then the other document that we provided is a summary of the big one. And so I think if you pull these 2 together, you can see that here we have some brief narratives about the role of that particular sector in helping to achieve the overall goal of reducing emissions and why that sector is important. Additionally, why it's important to prioritize resiliency efforts in those sectors as well. And then finally, we called out just a handful of bullet points each of areas that we thought would be particularly useful for immediate prioritization. And so that was the goal of this 2-page document that we shared with you all as well. And so I think it's worth noting that, as you think about all of these things that we have now thrown at you, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our approach. And so we went heavy on the carrots and light on the sticks. For local scale climate policy, I think focusing on incentives, education and outreach and partnerships is really the best path forward for a lot of the types of actions that we want to pursue. Usually when we think of the heavier sticks and the sort of regulation we need to pull the emissions curves down, a lot of that's going to need to happen at scales of governance larger than the township. We need state and federal support for transforming our power sector, transforming our transportation network and things like that. But advocating on behalf of smart policies like that at the state and federal level is also something we can do that's not quite a carrot or a stick, I would say. And so I think that, as you think about the recommendations that we've given, we felt like a healthy mix of both incentives and regulations was necessary. And we recognize that we can't get all the way there with just carrots. We are not going to incentivize our way out of this problem. There will need to be policy intervention that happens at all scales of government. And, I threw this in at the end because I thought that this was actually really important. And I hadn't talked to you all about this before. And that is, where does public support lie for this? Especially when we start to think about regulating things and requiring things and the heavier sticks instead of the carrots, right? You might be surprised that the public support is there for a lot of these things. So these graphics come from the Yale program on climate communication. And if you haven't had a chance to tinker around on their website, I'll put the link down there in the corner. It's a really cool it's a good rabbit hole to fall down. They do these extensive annual surveys that gauge public awareness and interest in a lot of issues related to our understanding of climate change as public and our responses to it. And I often find their findings surprising in a good way. If you look at this bottom graph here and the map, you'll see that there's broad support, not just in Center County, but across the country, to regulate CO2 as a pollutant. And you wouldn't necessarily expect that. I mean, we are looking at 72% of the American population support regulating CO2 as a pollutant. And that just blows my mind, because often I feel like the narrative that we hear in popular media about climate change paints it as a much more divided and divisive issue. But here's an area of consensus, right? Here's something that we can agree on across party lines and across other divides that sometimes muck up climate change work. So I think I really like to look for the areas where we agree and we can build consensus and work together on things where it seems like maybe otherwise we couldn't. The other thing that I wanted to call your attention to on this slide is, you get a sense of who the public is looking to work on climate change. And you can see that local government and citizens rank higher than Congress or the president. So the public is looking to you, and they're looking to each other to work on this challenge. And they want to know where to start and what to do. And so I think that's where our role of providing the education and outreach and incentives and tools to help address this problem really comes in. I think this could be due to the decades now of bickering and infighting at the federal level, total inaction to really get something done. People are just saying, let's tackle this where it's going to affect us, right at home in our communities. But does signaling the township's commitment to these things even matter? I think it probably does. And I think that it helps us figure out how we're going to translate these recommendations into action, right? So that action, I think that we are required to figure out as a committee what we can do to help you local government officials figure out how we address a global problem, right? This is a little bit different than some of the other issues that we've already talked about tonight that have a much more localized focus and therefore a localized solution. This is us chipping away at something that the whole world is trying to work on. And so that's a little bit tougher. So I think that, these things aren't going to happen organically, at least not enough. So I hope that we can take these recommendations and turn them into reductions and resiliency building that will take effort, and it will take people to get it done. And so we've included a couple of suggestions for how to carry this forward from here. And I think the two biggest takeaways from this would be that climate action should be something that we're baking into all facets of township governance rather than having it as its own standalone endeavor, right? This means not just integrating it into our existing commission and committee work or our strategic planning and hazard mitigation and things like that, but also ensuring that it gets attention in our budgeting priorities and that it starts to appear as part of township staff job responsibilities and duties. So, our volunteer efforts have gotten us pretty far, and we've still got a lot more we could do. But in order to make this more effective, we really need to integrate it throughout the township's work. And then finally, what about this committee? I mean, we have now done what we set out to do, and we have fulfilled the charges that were outlined for us when we began. And I think it will be up to the board to decide whether you want to convene another ad hoc group like this or establish a standing committee to leverage, the existing structures in the township, like participation in the CAS committee and things like that, to really continue this work and see it move forward. And then finally, I would just say, I was trying to think about, well, what does this forward momentum look like? Where do we really go from here? And I think that one of the most important things is that it really boils down to us measuring for progress to make sure that the things that we are focusing our time and effort on and the strategies that we adopt and implement are actually working. I think a really good first next step would be to formally adopt a regional interim target, 45% reduction to our 2016 baseline by 2030 to align with what the regional cap interim target is. And then I think that beyond that, we look to implement an initial 5-year reduction strategy, and maybe implementing that in 2022 at this point might be ambitious, but 2023 is on the table. And then finally, we'll need to monitor and track that for any realized reductions from those adopted strategies. So I think in the coming years, the inventory is going to need to be repeated to see if we really are pulling emissions down. And that's it. You know, I want to thank you all for your time. I think I speak for everyone on the committee, at least I hope so, when I say that we've really enjoyed the opportunity to work on all of this, and hopefully you will find some of the information included in those materials we sent along useful. We are happy to, you know, come and chat anytime if there are specific things in specific sectors you want to dig into more. I'm moving out of the township in a couple of months, but I'm not going far. I'll still be in Patton, and I'll always be in Ferguson in heart. So I hope you won't shun me once I'm gone. So I hope that we can keep these conversations moving forward, and I think that's it.
Brandy, thank you so much. You and the committee, the entire committee, for all the work that you've done. You really have been an inspiration in the region. We've really kick-started something, I think, regionally. And so does anyone have any questions first for Brandy? I'll reserve my comments for the end.
Laura, I didn't.
All right, I'm seeing.
Sorry, I didn't have any questions. This is Lisa. I just wanted to comment that I thought in the slides that were in the attachments in the agenda, there were just so many good concrete objectives that we can hopefully incorporate into the strategic plan as we work through those updates. I thought there was just a lot of really good concepts that we can integrate in there as we're looking to update that section. So I appreciated that.
Thank you.
It was really well done.
Thank you. I'm glad the goal is to make this easy, right? We want to make it possible to move these things forward. It's such a lofty goal to say we're going to be net zero, and then it's, how do we figure out how to get there? And step by step, action by action, you know, chipping away at it. There's no magic bullet here. We have to pull it down a little bit at a time, every place we can.
Brandy, maybe, I don't know if this is a question for you or Centrise. Were there staff that were supporting your work as a committee, Ferguson staff or regional staff either? Or were you all just pretty much on your own?
No. So I'll say that until he left, Dave Travolka attended, I think, every single committee meeting we held. Dave was very instrumental. He was very supportive. He was good because, you know, frankly, a lot of us committee members, you know, we had lots of good ideas, and Dave would say, okay, well, that will work, but here's a reason we can't do this thing, because, you know, procedural stuff that is beyond the scope of what we all understand. And Centrise then has been super supportive since Dave left. And then of course, Pam has also been part of our effort since she
Pam Adams,
since she took on that role as sustainability planner at the region. So we have definitely not done this alone. I think that
great.
Looking back on it, you know, I wish we could have and would have included more folks. We were just kind of, you know, going along.
No. That's great. I just was curious because, you know, it was a different kind of a committee where it wasn't, anyway, yeah. I was just curious as to how that was working. And then when you also served, sorry, one more question. You also served on the regional, the regional, not CAS, that's elected officials, the regional.
The technical advisory
tag. Yep. Okay. So Pam Adams also staffed that. And
Yeah.
then were also municipal staff involved with that?
There were municipal staff. I don't think, I think Pam is on the call. She might be able to chime in and answer this more accurately than I can. I don't think there was a municipal representative from each
Gotcha.
municipality, but Dave came to the meetings for a while. Dave was at least some of them, right, Pam?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering generally, just because we're, like, we're kind of trying to figure out how we're doing a lot of investment in the region and how we all work together. And so I appreciate just some that insight there. And again, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Like other topics we talked about already tonight, this I'm sure will also resurface on an agenda in the very near future. So
yes, and I'm always happy to come and chat anytime. So thank you for the
Wonderful.
opportunity to do the work.
And thank you. Plenty of work to be done.
Yes.
All right. Okay. If nothing else for Brandy, we will let her go and we will move on to COG and regional committee reports. Okay. First up, we have Human Resources Committee, Ms. Tiara Williams. I'm sorry. I guess I can't. Yeah, I do. I guess I do go through these individually. Tiara, do you have anything you wanted to highlight from your report?
Honestly, I figured that you did since you actually came to that meeting and you usually don't. So I felt like you wanted to probably highlight something. I did send out a miniature report to the board. I'll give it more detail if some supervisors feel like there wasn't enough, no problem. Still getting into everything, but I think the biggest fuss, quote unquote fuss, was about COLA because most people were worried about tax inflation, as well as 2 people denied accepting jobs due to the compensation. And so Dustin, one of the members from College Township, basically posed a question of how many employees can actually afford to live in our area and how to pay them. So I think that was a side discussion, but I'll let Laura discuss why she came to the meeting. So.
It was a good meeting. Yeah, I don't typically go to HR. The main reason I was there was to learn more about the, so many studies being done, the 5-year parks staffing study that was presented. So that's why I was there. And the only follow-up I actually have about that is that we as a board just request that, I rarely do this, but I really think that we should request that COG staff come and give us that presentation, because the comments were, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. It was, I would say in my time here, it's been the absolute most significant single proposal of financial increase that I've ever seen. So I still have yet to get a handle on it. So I'd like us to just request that COG come and give us as a board that same presentation that your committee got, Tiara. So just it's a 5-year study that, no, not 5-year study. It's a 5-year plan that increases staffing in one part of COG that is the parks. My understanding is that the 5-year increase is about 1.8 million. So that's very significant. So we would want to get a handle on that. So if we can just request they come and give us a presentation, that would be great, so we can understand that more fully. Centrise, would that be something we could just make a request to them?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I can reach out to the executive director at COG and figure out how best to coordinate and get that presented to the board at a future meeting.
Thanks. And then Tiara, that other item about, affordability. Yes, that's definitely an ongoing theme topic that we touch on and struggle with. One thing that Ferguson did and that COG is embarking on is that salary study. And the goal of that salary study is to make sure that your staff are being compensated in a market appropriate way for that time, that snapshot in time. So in Ferguson, we found that some staff, for various reasons, complicated reasons, were not really being paid what they should have been, being paid because of, anyway, complicated reasons. So we brought them up to that appropriate pay scale. So that is embarking now across COG. So today in exec, which I'll get to, we did mention that we should likely anticipate seeing the results of that be increased budget requests, because we will be having to likely do the same COG-wide. So there's goods and bad to that. It's great to pay people appropriately, and it's difficult to incorporate it into budgets. So it'll be work in progress. So thank you. Let's move on to the joint meeting of Land Use and Community Infrastructure, or the Lucy Committee, and the Center Regional Planning Commission meeting. Lisa, I believe you're going to report on both of those.
Yeah, this was a joint meeting. This is one of two in the year that's a joint meeting with the Center Region Planning Commission. So the agenda is in there. My meeting description is in the agenda, and I just wanted to note a couple of things. One is that in the agenda attachments from the meeting was an example of the Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, and you can see in the agenda discussion that there is a new approach to updating our comprehensive plan. It would use some of those layout concepts that are demonstrated in that plan, so you might want to take a look at that, and if you have any comments, feel free to get back to me. But I did go into it in a little bit of detail there in the report. And then the second thing I wanted to note and ask about is the item on primary scale solar, the study and toolkit that was completed by COG staff, and that was included in the agenda as well. So as I noted in the report, that demand for primary scale, and you might also know it as utility scale solar, they just changed the terminology a bit. That demand and interest has been increasing since we last addressed our ordinances here. We do regulate that in the township. So the presentation that was done by Pam Adams and Mark Bokel at the meeting was great. It was really well done. It explained everything that went into the toolkit that you can read in the agenda. My thought was to invite them to present that to the entire board and allow the board an opportunity to discuss if we need to look at our ordinances again. Like I said, the demand has changed. I sense there might be some need to revisit the ordinances that address this, and given that this toolkit now exists and hadn't before, I think it's a great opportunity to learn more about it and see if we need to update anything in our ordinances. So I wanted to get a sense from the board if that's something you'd like to pursue, if we would like to ask staff to arrange such a thing. I thought it was really valuable, so I wanted to offer that up.
Thoughts? You wanted to take a pulse now, right, Lisa?
I did, and if there's general consensus on that, I guess we could just ask that be moved along, and not in an urgent way, but I could certainly add it as a consent agenda item if we'd like to go that route. But it seemed to be applicable here as just part of this report.
Thanks. Well, I'm certainly supportive, especially if COG staff can kind of, I still working out that understanding of that relationship. If they, if COG staff time is going to be spent looking at our ordinance to see how we can improve our ordinance based on what they've learned, that would be great. So whatever we need to do to facilitate that would be great, I think. I don't know what others think.
And I'll add that, Jenna would be familiar with that, and I think she was probably in attendance at that meeting too. And so if that wasn't available to us to have them present, I'm sure she could go over it. But they're so knee deep in this study and having created this toolkit, and what they're doing now is, and I think this was in the agenda, they're taking it out. They're releasing it out to different entities and presenting where they're asked to. And so I thought, since we really have potential to be impacted by this, it seemed really fitting for us to get the information firsthand from them.
Yeah, I mean, I could go either direction, presentation to the board first, or they could just work directly with our staff to try to incorporate that. I personally have no preference on that. Others? Patty's shaking her head no. Lisa, do we want to just go with your recommendation? Since you're in that seat?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to have a conversation with Jenna and get her sense if she thinks that we actually need to open this up and look at it, or if she thinks that we do address that, or whatever the manager would think would be appropriate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Centrice, Centrice, would you prefer that we have a presentation in public from COG staff that are knee deep in this first? How would you prefer that we proceed?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I mean, I absolutely have no problem coordinating for a presentation if that's of interest. I think staff certainly can come forward and include in our upcoming either manager report or director of planning and zoning report a status update. And perhaps if there's still interest, then we can add it to a future agenda for board discussion. But I think I'm pretty confident at this point that staff is participating in that and can provide an update accordingly. And if you're still interested, as mentioned, we can get it added to a future agenda item. Does that work?
What do you think, Lisa?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll provide a
Great.
status update to our reports, and at any time we can add to a future board discussion if you'd like.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, Climate Action and Sustainability Committee. Ms. Caldwell.
Thanks. So just a couple of quick things to flag. I think the two biggest things of note, a citizen made a request for the COG to endorse a piece of federal legislation that would create a revenue neutral and border adjustable carbon fee and dividend, which would basically just put a price on carbon at the source of entry and going into the market, and then distribute that revenue back to taxpayers as a dividend. After quite a discussion, we did vote yes to send it to the executive committee to potentially have it move on to the agenda for the general forum. Also, Ms. Adams, who's here tonight, presented the ICLEI grant, which would allocate about $1 million towards addressing inequities within communities. So things like getting rooftop solar on affordable workforce housing. And so we did vote yes to support the CRPA staff in submitting that expression of interest. And I don't want to put Ms. Adams on the spot, but if there's anything else that you would like to add to that, I'm happy to turn this over to you.
Pam, you're on the spot.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I've got earbuds in that I don't always use. So it's basically a 1 in a million kind of shot. There's only going to be 2 awardees. And I didn't read the whole report, but if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. But it's an opportunity that if we don't get the funding this time, I do see this group working together for other new potential funding. So it's a good work in process, whether we get it this time or try again next time.
Great. Yeah, it looked like an interesting agenda. Great, thank you. Any other questions for Hillary or Pam Adams? All right, thank you both so much. Okay, next up, Finance Committee. I attended that. I think there were two major discussions, I guess, that I'll just highlight. The first was about establishing a committee to look at a fund balance policy. It's kind of very somewhat boring, dry finance committee stuff. I think that it's good. It's going to move forward, and it's good, and it'll be helpful. The issue that came up that I'm just going to reflect on for us is that we were asked to approve a committee structure that included municipal staff. And so I just wanted to make sure during that meeting that the manager of the township had been consulted about that. And I think due to some timing issues, it was sort of put forward to finance before the manager could really be fully consulted. And so I just kind of want to say, you know, that's something that I wouldn't have even noticed 4 years ago in my service to the township. But it's really important that we as elected officials always to defer to our manager, to task our staff. So it's just like now that I've, you know, served longer, I can kind of pick up on those things. So, you know, we are going to move forward. But I think in the future, just everybody just be careful to make sure that those lines of communication were open and that the manager is comfortable with, you know, the time that would be allotted for their staff to, you know, serve on that committee. So it was sort of like not really finance oriented, but more of a general COG township relationship kind of a thing. And let's see, the other item, sorry, I apologize, my report was not in the agenda tonight. There was, I had quite a week. The other item that I wanted to highlight was typically we fund our contribution to COG through our municipal contribution that's predicted each year, and we put it in our budget. On occasion, an issue comes up where there's an unanticipated cost, and because COG is funded by multiple municipalities and they don't want to impose the need to do, you know, a budget amendment on COG and additional money from the municipalities, the process that they use is a loan. So they take a loan from another agency within COG to cover the unanticipated cost. We've decided in the past that there should be interest charged for that, just like a regular market loan. So the question came up, you know, what we're doing is we're paying off this loan, but in paying off the loan, there's interest. So the question that came up was, after a year or two passes, we've taken this loan. Well, theoretically, you could reintegrate that back into your COG contribution as opposed to paying that interest. So follow up to the manager, Centrice. The question that came up is, does Ferguson Township wish to pay off the balance of the loan that we are responsible for that was taken out to cover Millbrook Marsh costs from the fire budget? So that's the question. We're not going to answer it tonight. That's the question that and I found out today in executive that the timing for that to be answered is during the COG budget cycle, which is upcoming. So in the next month or two, we would want to determine if that was beneficial to us. And if so, let COG know that we want to take that route. So, and that also includes my executive committee report, which you don't find in the agenda even listed, but we did have today because that was also part of the conversation today. Any questions for either finance or executive? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to Public Safety Committee, which was canceled. Anything you want to highlight from our cancellation notice, Patty? You can shake your head if no. Okay. Facilities Committee, report from April 5th meeting. Patty, anything you want to highlight from that?
The only thing, the report covers what we discussed in facilities. And the only thing that's changed since I submitted that report is we got the email from Pam Salakangas that the groundbreaking for Whitehall Road Regional Park is going to be April 27th at 2:30. And that's it.
Thank you so much. We also, I guess it's official now, so we can release the information. We did get the information that our facilities coordinator for COG is resigning. So we'll be doing a search for our new coordinator, I suppose, upcoming. Okay, that we've come to the end of reports. If there's no questions for Patty, we'll move on. Before we go on to staff reports, I would like to announce, which I probably should have done at the beginning of the meeting, and I apologize. I need to announce that we had several executive sessions on matters of personnel. We met March 22nd, March 29th, 30th, 31st, and April 12th. So I just needed to announce that. So moving on to staff reports, our interim manager report. Ms. Martin, would you care to highlight anything from your report this evening?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Everything that I would share with the board is provided in my written interim manager's report, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you much. Any questions for Centrise for her report, and any questions for Public Works, Planning and Zoning, or the Chief of Police? Okay, I am seeing none. Thank you all for all the work you're doing and keeping us informed about it. So we have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to new business. First up is our consent agenda. We have our treasurer's report for February up for acceptance. And so I will take a motion to accept the treasurer's report and approve the consent agenda.
This is Patty, so moved.
You, second, please.
This is Tiara, second.
Thank you. And I'll say thank you very much to Mr. Jerry Learn for your service on the Parks Committee. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor of the acceptance of the treasurer's report and approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next up is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, proclaiming May 15th through 21st, 2022 as Police Officers Week in Ferguson Township. This will be introduced by Ms. Centrise Martin. Centrise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to share that provided with the agenda is provided with the agenda attached, as well as a link to the digital version of the agenda, is the draft proclamation to officially recognize Police Week during May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as Police Week in Ferguson Township. We are very fortunate to have wonderful police officers providing a great deal of community policing and keeping our community safe, and we would like to officially recognize them through this proclamation.
Thank you so much. There is a recommended motion in your agenda. I'll entertain that at this point in time.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation designating May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as Police Officers Week in Ferguson Township.
Do I have a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the matter? All right, and I did see Chief here. There's Chief. Would you care to say anything at this point in time, Chief? Not to put you on the spot.
No, other than thank you for this, and it'll be well received by the men and women of the department.
Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate all that you all do. All right, we have a motion and a second. This is not a resolution, so we can do a regular voice vote. All in favor of the proclamation, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next up is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, proclaiming May 15th through 21st, 2022 as Public Works Week. This will also be introduced by Ms. Centrise Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So provided with the agenda as well as a digital link is a draft proclamation officially recognizing May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as Public Works Week in Ferguson Township. Again, recognizing all of the hard work and commitment by our Public Works crew members as well as our office staff working hard every day. So also provided is a recommended motion, and again, we on behalf of staff would also like to thank everyone for their work in Public Works.
Thank you so much. There is a recommended motion found in your agenda. I'll entertain it at this time.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation designating May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as Public Works Week in Ferguson Township.
This is Hillary. I'll second.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Connie.
No, that's good. That's good. I kind of try to wait to see. Okay, this is good. So we do have a motion in a second. I see Mr. Modricker is here this evening. Mr. Modricker, as Director of Public Works, would you care to say anything about our proclamation?
Thank you very much on behalf of the department for the proclamation. On Thursday, May 19th, around the noon hour, I am organizing a small event to celebrate for the crew, have a little cookout. I'm also going to invite some of the regional public works to come on over and do kind of open house for the building because folks haven't seen that. And police, you're welcome to attend.
That sounds lovely. Thank you so much. Also, I'm not fishing for thank yous when I give the mic to y'all, but we really appreciate the work that you're doing, and so we're really happy to do this. So we do have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And motion passes unanimously. Next up is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, proclaiming May 2022 Bike Month proclaiming May as 2022 Bike Month. Also introduced by Ms. Centrise Martin.
Well, thank you again, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda as well as a digital link on the digital agenda is a draft Bike Month proclamation. There are several activities scheduled and coordinated through Center Region Planning Agency Office. I believe in attendance with us is also Trish Meek, should she like to comment or answer questions. And so the board is asked this evening to encourage residents of Ferguson Township to participate Bike Month during the month of May, also designating May 16th through May 22nd as Bike to Work Week and May 20th, 2022 as both Bike to Work Day and Center Region Spring Bike Anywhere Friday. Provided with the agenda is a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
Thank you so much, Centrise. Trish, I am not seeing you on a square right now. Would you care? There you are. Would you care to say any words this evening?
Sure. I would just like to thank Ferguson Township for always participating and helping us promote education and encouragement activities related to bicycle travel. As you know, it's not just recreation in the Center Region. It is a true transportation need, and it is really about equity. So we want to provide opportunities for everyone in the Center Region to be able to travel in the way they choose to. So thank you for everything that you do. Your staff has been great about promoting the regional activities and partnering with us as well to do Ferguson Township activities too.
Thanks so much, Trish.
Yes.
And there is a recommended motion found in your agenda. I'd like to entertain that now.
This is Hillary. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation designating May 2022 as Bike Month, May 16th through May 22nd as Bike to Work Week, and May 20th as both Bike to Work Day and Center Region Spring Bike Anywhere Friday.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So many thanks. It's just really enjoyable to truck around the bike paths of the Center Region, really is. So, all right, if no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And we're moving on to a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, proclaiming Friday, April 29th to be Ferguson Township Arbor Day, introduced by Centrise Martin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So provided with the agenda, again, is a link to the proclamation designating Friday, April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day. Additional information is presented within the proclamation, and I'm happy to share that our new arborist has really just hit the ground running since he started and coordinated this fantastic event, and is thankful that the board give consideration to approving this proclamation to have present on April 30th during the Arbor Day event. And of course, Dave Modriker is here with us, can provide additional information or answer questions. Provided with the agenda is also a recommended motion for the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you so much. Yes, I saw a little publication that our new arborist had put out. It's really cute. Really just excited about having him on board. Mr. Modriker, would you care to offer any comments on the Arbor Day proclamation?
You are certainly all welcome to attend, and we can fight over who reads the proclamation on Arbor Day itself. But yeah, come out and meet Larry, our new arborist.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Wait a minute. I don't think I entertained a motion yet. Did I? Okay. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
This is Tia. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation designating Friday, April 29, 2022 as Ferguson Township Arbor Day.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, for the appointment of Centrise Martin as Ferguson Township Manager pursuant to the Ferguson Township Home Rule Charter, Article 3, Township Manager, repealing all inconsistent resolutions or parts thereof, effective date April 19th, 2022. This will be introduced by me. Well, as you can see in our agenda, the board partnered with GovHR USA to initiate a national recruitment to interview professionals that have the desired experience, education, and skills to serve as the next township manager. The board conducted a national search that yielded 23 resumes from 10 states, including Pennsylvania. The board completed a competitive interview process to identify a new township manager, and we are excited to announce that Centrise Martin accepted our offer to serve as the township manager of Ferguson Township. We have a recommended motion in our agenda. I'm going to first entertain that motion.
Yes, I would like to move that the Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, for the appointment of Centrise Martin as Ferguson Township Manager pursuant to the Ferguson Township Home Rule Charter, Article 3, Township Manager, repealing all inconsistent resolutions or parts thereof, effective April 19, 2022.
This is Hillary. I second.
And this is a public hearing, which I was so excited I forgot about. So I'm now going to open that public hearing and take comment, which seems appropriate anyway. So I'll take any comments at this time. Anyone care to comment on this public hearing? All right, well then I'll just leave that to the board. We'll close the public hearing and just, I just wanted to say, I think we've said it all already, but we're just really thrilled that Centrise Martin has accepted our offer to serve as the new Ferguson Township Manager. So if anybody else would like to say any words, just congratulations and thank you. All right, let's see here. This would be a resolution. So I'm going to ask Ms. Martin to please do a roll call vote on this resolution.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and if I can, I would just like to take a minute and say thank you to the Board of Supervisors. It's an honor to have served and continue to serve as your manager, especially a group of inspiring, empowered, strong, smart leaders of Ferguson Township. I appreciate and I'm honored by all to serve in this capacity. I also want to take a minute to express my sincere gratitude to staff, department heads, and every staff member within Ferguson Township. So So I stay professional and I don't get a little choked up here. I'm just gonna say thank you. Thank you all very much. And to the residents of Ferguson Township, thank you all for your outreach these last couple of days and through these last couple of weeks to provide the support. It's an honor, so thank you. I will now take a roll call, Madam Chair. This is roll call resolution number 2022-06. Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
Ms. Denetti?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And let's go ahead and move on to consideration on rescheduling the Board of Supervisors regular meeting on Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 to Monday, May 16th, 2022. All right, this will be introduced by Century Martin.
Yes, let me just pull up the agenda here. My apologies,
I can also introduce it because Century told me that this is right. This is primary election day, and we are a location for election. So we are either going to disappoint the county or move our meeting. So we do have a recommended motion to move our meeting that I would entertain at this time.
This is Lisa. I'll move the Board of Supervisors approve rescheduling the regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 to Monday, May 16th, 2022.
application to the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for a special event focused on agritourism in concert with not just the Millheim Borough as participated last year, but also with Harris Township. So we're excited to partner and include them in this event this year for 2022. If successful, the event would connect Millheim Borough, Harris Township, and Ferguson Township establishments, including 814 Cider Works and Pine Grove Hall, for music and locally sources menu through self-guided tours participants can take throughout the week of the event. The resolution also authorizes a local match up to $7,500 that would come from the township's economic development account. Provided with the agenda as a recommended motion for the board's consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional information.
Thank you so much. And this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open this up to public comment. Would anyone care to comment on this item? Okay, I am seeing none, so I will close the public hearing. And there is a recommended motion in our agenda. If folks are ready to provide that, I'm willing to entertain that at this point.
This is Hillary. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the township manager to authorize a local match up to $7,500 and submit a tourism grant application to the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for an agritourism event with the Millheim Borough and Harris Township.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Ms. Patty, I'll second.
All right, fantastic. Any discussion on the item? Looking forward to this event again this year and supporting our ag and tourist type businesses and having a little maybe shindig for folks to join us at one of our local places that might be participating, like Pine Grove Hall or J&L Cidery. So I'm really looking forward to it. If there's no other comments, this is a resolution, so we will be asking for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is resolution number 2022-07. Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
Ms. Denetti?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously, and we'll move on to the Center Animal Veterinarian Hospital Land Development Plan, introduced by Ms. Jenna Wargo.
Thank you. September 24th, 2022, ELA Group submitted a preliminary land development plan on behalf of their client, Bessie Tracks LLC. Parcel is located at 1518 West College Avenue, and it's located in Terrace Streetscape zoning district. This land development plan proposes a 600 square foot addition to the existing 5,500 square foot building. The owner recently acquired the parcel to the east and consolidated the two lots to create a new 0.9 acre lot. And that was to allow for parking to be expanded and reconfigured for a better flow. Zoning hearing board heard the applicant's request for variances in 4 different areas. They were all granted. And then at the April 5th board meeting, you all waived the modification waiver request for 225A09. That's our streetscape design standards. Planning Commission reviewed this preliminary land development plan at the April 11th meeting and recommended approval pending outstanding staff comments that are provided in the agenda in my memorandum dated April 12th, 2022. Staff's recommendations that the Board of Supervisors approve Center Animal Hospital preliminary land development plan. And we have the representation from ELA Group as well as the applicant on the call if there are any additional questions that the board may have.
Thank you so much, Jenna. You will find a motion in your agenda that I will entertain right now.
I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the Center Animal Veterinarian Hospital preliminary land development plan, subject to the conditions described in the Director of Planning and Zoning Memorandum dated April 12th, 2022.
Thank you.
This is Hillary, I second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the item? I'm seeing none. Looks like we're ready for a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for waiting. We had no questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to, I'm sorry, my agenda jumped here. Okay, let's move on to a public hearing on a conditional use application for Farmstead View Subdivision, introduced by Jenna Wargo.
Thank you. Application for a conditional use permit for the subdivision of a flag lot in the Farmstead View Subdivision has been filed with the Township by Pantera Engineering on behalf of their client, Farmstead Developer LLC. Developer proposes to subdivide a flag lot on the plan including your agenda. That is 103 Farmstead Lane. That's lot 1. Township zoning ordinance and the municipality's planning code require a public hearing on the application. The Board of Supervisors must take action to approve or deny the application within 45 days following the hearing. As part of an approval, the board may attach reasonable conditions and safeguards related to the conditional use standards detailed in the zoning ordinance. The board will now hold a public hearing on the application for a conditional use permit for the flag lot proposed on Farmstead View Subdivision Plan. Chair Laura Danini will conduct the hearing. As part of the regular meeting agenda, following the hearing, the board will be asked to direct the Director of Planning and Zoning to prepare a written decision for review and consideration of approval at the May 3rd, 2022 regular meeting. Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenna. Okay, and this is a public hearing that I'm about to conduct, so I'm opening the public hearing right now. Would anyone care to comment on this conditional use? Okay, I'm seeing none on Zoom. Is anyone in the room that wanted to comment? Okay, I'm seeing none. So I will entertain the motion that we find in our agenda.
This is Tiara. I move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Director of Planning and Zoning to present findings and fact and a written decision to the board for consideration at the May 3rd regular meeting.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the matter? So this is, they're establishing a flag lot. Okay. Seeing no discussion on the matter, I believe this is just a regular voice vote. Ms. Martin, can you confirm that for me? This is just a regular voice vote?
Yes, it's a regular voice vote.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And we are up to the modification waiver request that will be introduced by Jenna Wargo for Farmstead View Subdivision Plan 22-515.d.2. Jenna.
Thank you. On behalf of their client, Pantera Engineering has requested modification from 22515D2, tree preservation and protection. This section of the ordinance requires the applicant to preserve 20% of existing eligible tree canopy on site. Eligible trees include trees that are in good condition, as determined by the township arborist, native species, and if the preservation of a tree renders the lot undevelopable. The applicant is proposing to subdivide this lot into 6 residential lots and 1 stormwater management lot. The applicant is proposing to preserve 17.3% of the existing tree canopy and remediation for the remaining 2.7%. The remediation proposes installation of 7 new trees in the proposed residential lots, and when planted, these trees will meet the required 20% coverage, and when fully grown, exceed that 20% requirement. Ferguson Township Tree Commission reviewed the subdivision plan and is recommending the applicant preserve the 27-inch red pine to meet that 20% requirement. Planning Commission reviewed this request at the April 11th, 2022 regular meeting and recommended that the board approve the request to remediate. The staff recommendation is that the Board of Supervisors deny the modification waiver request. And we have representation from Pantera on, as well as Dave Modricker, Public Works Director, if there are stormwater questions in relation to this plan, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Okay, well, we do have a recommended motion that I would be willing to entertain at this point if someone would like to offer it.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors deny the modification waiver request from Section 20 or Chapter 22, 515D2, tree preservation and protection.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on this matter?
Can I raise my, Laura, can I speak up, or I can't find out where to raise my hand at?
Do you mean in the Zoom interface?
Yeah, the Zoom.
I won't make you struggle with it. You can use your regular hand. Yes, please, by all means.
Yes, this is Mark Toretti. I'm with Pantera Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of my clients, Jim Massadini and Rick Swanger. And we had looked at the tree that the staff in the tree committee is looking at trying to preserve. And with the grading of the site, because for the subdivision plan, we had to get the stormwater to work, we pretty much had to grade the sites for the lots on the preliminary rough grading plan. So our grading plan shows everything except right where the house is going to be itself and the grading for, right around the house. And when we looked at that and trying to get the grades to work to save the tree, we really couldn't get those grades to work. Holding the driveway slopes that the township allows and working with, and also the distance of the lots. We did look at, what tree, there was another tree that we are proposing to save up out front of the site, there are 4 black walnuts that are in a row there. And one of those, we can save, it's feasible to save it, but it was only 17.3% of the canopy coverage. And your ordinance does require 20% of canopy coverage. And so where we're looking at how, how some other ways to remediate that. And what we're proposing is for each lot, put similar type of trees, but something maybe not a black walnut, but we're looking at a couple other trees with similar tree structures on each lot, where when they're planted, they will meet or exceed the canopy coverage. And once they're mature, they will exceed the existing of all the tree coverage on the lot by 4 times. For that. So we were saying, like, my clients understand they're trying to save the tree. The one that the tree commission and staff wants, we having difficulty trying to do that. So we know we can save other tree, but we're short on the canopy coverage. And we're looking at then saying, well, with our proposal, it'll also benefit each of the lots by adding some trees to each of the lots, rather than saving one tree that would just probably benefit maybe one lot on there. And so that's, and we were held with the grades, we're held with the township has requirements for the driveway slopes for the lots to try to work with the grades. So we, looking at that, we really weren't able to get something to work that would be able to save those trees, the tree that the township staff was recommending to be saved. So we looked at an alternate, and I says we're short by 2.7% of the tree canopy, but we wanted to remediate that by a greater amount.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate y'all looking at the plan in that way. I know that I am going to go with the tree commission recommendation. But I definitely do appreciate you and your client, thinking about land development in this way, because I think that was, one of the goals of that ordinance. So I as a board member, am ready to support the motion, but we will, if anyone else has a differing opinion or wanted to talk about that, we're certainly able to do that. Did anyone else want to talk about this item any further? Okay.
Well,
all right.
One quick question. If it is voted no, whenever we come back and try to get something to work, we're probably going to need some type of other relief on some other design parts than possibly to get this to work, to try to save that tree. And, and that's something I want to just check with the board if they would be favorable, that we may need, it may be real steeper driveway slopes. It may be, some things like that possibly to get something to work, if this is voted no. But I wanted to just,
Well, Mark, that we are always willing to work with an applicant. Okay. So I'm not going to make any promises, but we always consider reasonable requests. We did for Center Animal Hospital. We tried to talk them through and consider every request. So I'll say you are absolutely 100% welcome, and we will always take serious and consideration, have serious consideration for any request put before us. So, Mr. Mound, I'm not sure how I say your last name. Jim Mound.
Thank you. It's actually Mond. It rhymes with bond.
Okay, thank you.
Would
you care to make some comments?
Were you opening it up for public comment? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, try to keep it as brief as possible. But yep, public comment is welcome. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to mention, I find it very interesting when I look at tonight's agenda, there's an item on there for Arbor Day and celebrating that and our trees. And when I look at our website, the township website, and it talks about everything we do for trees and saving trees. And you come into the township on the roads and there's a sign that talks about our trees, or I think it's called Tree City or something like that. So, you know, we celebrate the trees, and here is probably at least a 75-year-old, 50 to 60 foot, just legend of a tree, that the community could just really benefit by having stay there. That development will benefit by that. And for all the things we stand for with trees, I know it's in one way it's just a tree, but this is one really special tree. I sent some pictures of that tree as well as the other tree that's been considered to save, and I don't know if those can be shown or not, but there's just such a stark difference between the trees. So I hope that you do support the motion and deny the request, and hopefully that tree can live for 200-300 years. It's that kind of a tree. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your involvement in this matter. Thank you. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, seeing none, I think we are ready for a vote, and this will be a regular voice vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, and motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for your time.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we've got a contract 2021-C4. Is that 2021, right?
Yes.
I think, is it? Okay. All right, 2021-C4 Herald Drive. This will be introduced by Dave Modricker.
I have a couple different contract award memos open. I got to get the right one.
Sure, no problem.
So this is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip something? I am so sorry. Dave, I'm so sorry. I skipped something in the agenda.
Okay.
So you have another moment to figure out where you're at. I skipped right over Nittany Dental Associates. I apologize. I believe this is going to be introduced by Jenna Wargo. Jenna, that's you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Minnie.
I'm sorry.
Pentair Engineering, on behalf of their client, has requested a waiver from 22301 General. This section of the ordinance defines subdivision land development review process, requires certain proposals to proceed as a preliminary and a final land development plan, or there's a preliminary/final land development plan option. And there's also the minor alteration plan, minor subdivision plan, etc. The applicant recently acquired the former First National Bank building located at 2591 Park Center Boulevard. The applicant is proposing to convert the 3 existing drive-through lanes and enlarge that space to a total of 1,600 square feet. The final square footage for that building would increase from 5,100 to 6,700 square feet. The applicant is proposing to have their plan processed as a minor land development plan, Chapter 223063, as amended by Ordinance 1076, outlines criteria for a plan to be considered as a minor land development plan. Planning Commission reviewed the request at the April 11th regular meeting. They recommended to the Board of Supervisors granting of the application and recommended the plan proceed as a minor land development plan. Staff's recommendation is that the Board of Supervisors grant the modification waiver request.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Before I entertain a motion, I just want to ask a quick question. Oh, maybe it's not quick. I hope it's quick. So I'm still learning about the minor land development. So what changes here in terms of things that the applicant does not have to do and potential impact? So is there a difference in traffic analysis? Is there a difference in lighting plan? Is there a different, could you just kind of like hit the high points for us there?
Yes, so we created this minor land development plan process. It's truly just to act similarly to the minor subdivision process. the applicant still has to meet all of the township's ordinance requirements. It is cutting down on those reviews by planning commission and the board. So this would proceed as a preliminary / final plan. And we're recommending this staff-wise because it's already a existing all impervious lot. No more parking is required. So there's different circumstances with this where it is minor in nature. Unfortunately, it's not meeting that 1,000 square foot addition threshold.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for taking the time to explain that to us. Okay. I am feeling good about entertaining a motion if others are ready to put that on the table for us.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors grant the modification waiver request and allow the plan to proceed as a minor land development plan per, what is that, 223063.
This is Tiara, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And now we are on to the contract 2021 C4 Harold Drive. Dave Modricker, thank you.
Thank you. There are times when we keep the contract number based on the year that we start the design. So since we started Harold Design last year, we kept the contract number.
Gotcha.
Bids were open publicly for contract 2021 C4 Harold Drive improvements on April 5th. The bid was advertised in the Center Daily Times. 4 bids were received. I will read those into the record. Mid State Paving and Excavation, $8,520.50. Cottle's Asphalt Maintenance, $87,439.35. Galeno Hawbaker, $89,648.25. HRI, $97,536. Is a copy of the bid tabulation. In this case, the engineer's estimate was approximately $93,000. The budget included $123,000 for the work. All bids were actually within budget in this case. And I'm recommending that the Board of Supervisors award the contract to Mid-State Paving and Excavation for a total of $80,520.50.
Thank you, Dave. I'll entertain that motion at this time.
This is Lisa.
This is
Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors award contract 2021-C4 Harold Drive improvements to Mid-State Paving and Excavation in accordance with their bid for $80,520.50.
This is Tiara, I'll second that.
Any discussion? Thank you, Dave. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to contract 2022-C8 pavement markings. Also Dave.
So bids were open for this contract, 2022 C8 pavement markings on March 8th. The bid was advertised in the Center Daily Times. We received 1 bid in this case, Alpha Space Control Company, Inc., in the amount of $429,077.29. Ferguson Township's part of that contract is $198,877.12. I'd like to take a little bit of time to explain the reasoning here. And so this contract, we actually bid and 11 other municipalities piggyback on it. So they share and benefit from the low cost that we receive, and they're able to piggyback on the contract. They actually write their own purchase orders for their portion of the work. We award the contract in total. However, our portion of it is only the portion that we need to pay, and all of the other municipalities take care of their portion. So in this case, and I also want to add that This includes pavement eradication. I have that outlined in the award memo. I don't want to complicate things, but I just want to say that this contractor paints lines and eradicates lines, and the reason lines are eradicated or removed is in advance of microsurfacing. They both come out of Fund 35. They're accounted for in different line items. This year, the contract amount, the bid, was over our approved budget. And there was a significant increase in unit pricing in comparison to last year's. So we took a little time between bid opening and now to evaluate a remedy and a recommendation for the board. We also discussed the matter with the 11 other municipalities that piggyback. Each of those other 11 municipalities still desires to piggyback, and they will either award the full amount and increase their budget, or they will manage it within their budget. We've talked to each of them, and they're going to do one or the other, and that works for us. In our case, in Ferguson Township, reviewed the matter with the engineering section, and a recommendation that I am proposing for your consideration is that we paint certain roads on even years, we paint certain roads on odd years, and some roads we paint every year. And we put together a map and a drawing. We determined the quantities, and we are recommending this based on a review of standards, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and that also considers the traffic counts on those roads. If we do this, we would be able to award the contract and manage our portion of the work within our budget, less than our budget. So I am recommending that the Board of Supervisors award the contract to Alpha Space Control Company, Inc. in the amount of $429,077.29, and that we will implement the proposed even odd year painting interval for a total of $135,803.83. So I'm basically asking you to award the contract to Alpha Space Control, and we will manage the contract within our budget.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to explain that.
Yes.
We do have a recommended motion in the agenda. Let's entertain that.
This year, I move that the Board of Supervisors award contract 2022 C8 pavement markings to Alpha Space Control Company in the amount of $429,077.29, and that the staff manage the contract within the budgeted amount.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Any discussion on the matter? Patty?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the creativity, Dave Mudricker, so thank you for that. But I just have a question. So now, it has to do with the computer programs that we use. Now, does Paver keep track of just the assessments, or is like the paint markings part of Paver? So is that something that it would track, like Tracer is tracking other things for us?
Probably not. The condition of the pavement we will track in Paver, and Tracer we'll use for asset management. If this program's working for us, we'll just really track this in GIS and Excel spreadsheets, and then we will know which roads to paint in any given year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Good question. So much tracking. Patty, I'm impressed you remembered all those names, all those acronyms. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we move on to contract 2022-C1 Street Improvement Project, also introduced by Dave Modricker.
Bids were open for this contract, 2022 C1 street improvement projects in town on Tuesday, April 12th. Roads included in this contract are sections of West Aaron Drive, North Allen Street, Circleville Road, Parkrest Lane, Research Drive, Sleepy Hollow Drive. We had a number of individuals at the bid opening. Again, it was advertised as required. Sent invitations to 7 qualified contractors. 3 contractors bid on the project. Galeno Hawbaker Inc. in the amount of $793,174.25. HRI Inc. $996,734, no cents. New Enterprise Stone and Lime Company Inc. $1,155,898.25. The bid tabulations attached, the engineer's estimate, the budget for this for these roads, $1,039,000. I'm recommending the Board of Supervisors award the contract to Galeno Hawbaker Inc. in the amount of $793,174.25.
Thanks, Dave.
Yes.
Well, we did know this moment would be coming. I have a question. How likely is it, it's a trick question, Dave. How likely is it that you would have like a change order from the low bidder that would like increase their cost so much that it would match the second to the lowest bidder in this case? Like, how likely is that? That's a chunk of change there that would be a change order.
So, dealing with change orders is always a challenge. And even if we did award a change to the low bidder, and change orders are common, we also have to consider that the second low bidder may have also requested a change order because our contracts are based on unit pricing. So it's not a lump sum contract. So if the units of, say, the scratch course of asphalt increased by a certain number of ton, likely had the second low bidder done the work, the quantities would have increased there also. Also, one of the things that may increase our costs or could lessen it is, I believe we have asphalt escalator clauses in these contracts, as large as they are. So some of the price may fluctuate no matter who gets awarded the contract based on the cost of asphalt at the time that the work is done versus the time the contract is bid. So you may see some slight adjustments there. But there is a significant difference in this case between the first and the second.
There really is. Okay. All right. So would someone like to offer the motion that's available on the agenda? Would anyone like to have any questions answered before we entertain this motion?
Sure. I know I've expressed this before, and I do understand that we have a fiscal and a fiduciary like responsibility to our taxpayers, and I really want to respect that. I also want to make sure that money is going to workers and not just corporations. And so from my understanding, knowing that this company is still under probation and knowing that there is supposedly a corporate monitor of their practices, before I would feel comfortable awarding this contract and the following contract on the agenda, I personally would need more information from that corporate monitor to ensure that they are utilizing best practices for their company.
I can provide that, knowing there's a concern. Page 5 of the memorandum does provide a notice to public owners submitted by the contractor. I specifically included that. And also knowing there may be some concern, I will note that we do require that any of the contractors that bid on our projects are PennDOT pre-qualified, so they still hold their PennDOT pre-qualification and are allowed to bid on projects as a PennDOT pre-qualified bidder. But I would also, defer to the manager and our solicitor on information that the board may need to help you determine if you believe the contractor is responsible. So there's some terminology that we use, contract law and contract award. And, with our type of contracting, which is typical of, municipal governments, it's a low bid environment. So we publicly bid contracts. And then, the measure is the contractor responsible and responsive. So responsive is a little easier. That's, did they fill out the right bid forms? Did they submit addendums? Did they provide submittals? Those types of things. Responsible is more the issue that Ms. Caldwell was bringing up.
And so my follow-up question, and maybe this is me jumping the gun, and I certainly hope other people are able to voice their opinions. Is it possible to then change this recommended motion to, do we have to award this contract and the upcoming contract? Do we have to award these tonight? Is this something that we could potentially put onto a further agenda, just so if any specific board members or any members of the public have additional questions or additional information that they would like from the company, that would give us time to receive that and process it before making a more informed decision?
Yeah, the contract probably allows 45 days from the bid opening. That's typical. I can tell you, you do not have to make an award tonight.
Thanks. Centrise, is there anything that you wanted to add right now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I will go ahead and share with the board that I did consult briefly with the solicitor prior to this meeting, just to determine, based on previous comments that I've heard supervisors make at public meetings with the concern, given the situation with Hall-Baker and the recent situation that they've encountered based on facts that have been provided. And the solicitor did identify a process to which our municipality can go through, essentially identify, a search to see if the contractor is on a state list that would forbid awarding contracts, which based off of PennDOT's unsuccessful attempt to not award any bids to Glenn Hall-Baker, the solicitor suggested that it's likely that Glenn Hall-Baker is not on the list of contractors not eligible to be awarded bids. Additional criterion that may be considered as part of the process is, one, for example, would be the township may be in a position to disqualify a contractor from being awarded a bid if they have failed to pay their performance bond or their subs, and the township would have to come in and finish it, and or if they poorly performed on a job, or in some way there was proof that they had cheated the township out of something that we would, be able to report on. And essentially, and I'm giving a very high overview, and of course we could certainly get a written opinion from the solicitor, but without any of those three areas to which we would be able to prove that a contractor is not, eligible, a local municipality could potentially position themselves to be invited to a lawsuit if we didn't award based on just the recent situation at hand. It's my understanding that the restitution has been paid and that matter is now closed, and while they are currently being monitored, we would need to undergo a different process to consider any contractor not on Ferguson Township's list of contractors to be awarded bids if they came in indeed as the responsible and lowest bidder. So that, I hope that answers your question, Supervisor Caldwell. Certainly you don't have to make it, as Mr. Modricker noted, we are within a 45-day window to table this and add this to the next agenda. And if the board desires, I'm happy to get a written opinion that can perhaps summarize a little bit more clearly with the steps that a municipality may take. I also will share that Ferguson Township is not alone. It's my understanding that Patton and the State College Borough also have had reservations, but ultimately decided to continue with the award to Glenn Hall Baker based on the code of ordinances that we have to follow through with. So I'll look to the board at this point to inform me if you want to table this. I'm happy to get a solicitor, our solicitor, to provide a written opinion. Or we can certainly take action, but based on current circumstances, the recommended motion would be what I would recommend if you indeed feel you need to make the decision this evening.
So go ahead, Patty. I was going to try to sum up, but I don't necessarily want to. Go ahead, Patty.
No, that's great. And I appreciate the concern, and I share the concern that Hillary, you have. But I also appreciate that we need to, we have an aggressive public works schedule this year and things to get done. And I recall that these roads were high on the list of things that needed to be done. So I guess I'm interested in moving forward with the motions that are in the agenda, and offering the forgiveness and hoping that best management practices are in place there and they really are following through.
Patty the optimist. Tiara.
I understand what the point of moving forward, so I do agree with Patty on that point, but I would say I personally would feel more comfortable with a little bit more information and just to gather everything and not open us up to anything that we don't want to be opened up to, because I don't want that for us. So I would say with that, as well as the next contract that's coming up, I feel like that probably all falls within the same somewhat line. So that's what I would say. I would be for tabling it and getting a little bit more information, as Centrice and Hillary suggested.
Thank you. And I see a yellow hand and a finger up there. So let me go to the yellow hand first. Hillary.
Sorry, my only question was to Mr. Modricker. If we do table this to the next regular meeting, will this still fall within, as Patty rightly noted, there is an aggressive schedule moving forward through the rest of the year, and that 45 days from the beginning of bids through the end of this, would that still grant you enough time to be able to complete what you need to do, but also give us enough time to gather more information and absorb that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate your asking. We do have an aggressive schedule. The sooner we make an award, the earlier we can get on calendars and get work coordinated and started. I will say, though, that we can wait until the next meeting to satisfy, concerns of the elected officials. I do also want to mention, because, Centrice listed a number of items that the solicitor mentioned. I have had, issues in the past with some contractors, and for some of the reasons that Ms. Martin mentioned, we have barred, so to speak, from working for a number of years. We have not had those issues with Glenn Hall Baker, and they don't exist. So you're not going to find that in part of the research that you do. But there may be other matters, that the solicitor is able to, provide you guidance on.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Lisa, did you want to say anything there from the main meeting room?
Well, I agree with the concerns. I share them. And to Patty's point, I think it's likely going to end up that we're required, barring any type of bad acts, I guess, on the part of the contractor, that we could bar them from awarding this contract. It seems like we'd need to award it. So I'd be comfortable either way, you know, moving it forward today or waiting, getting the solicitor's opinion and putting it on the next agenda. And I think, you know, that would probably make us all feel more comfortable. It sounds like that's what we would all feel best about, maybe, you know, knowing we might have to move forward with something. So I guess that would be my opinion, is table it and put it on the next agenda, get that opinion.
Basically what we're headed toward here is the idea that we would table this conversation, this award and the next award until the next meeting. And in between, we're going to get a written solicitor opinion. But there's really nothing else, like, in terms of timing, we're going to have to award this contract before we go through, even if there was like something to investigate and like build this case, like we need to award a contract before any of those other things happen. So really all we're looking for is that solicitor's opinion in writing, basically. Is that?
I think so.
Okay. So I think, do we then want a motion to table this until the next meeting?
Yeah, this is Hillary. I motion to table, and hopefully this is kosher, both contracts 2022-C1 and 2022-C2 until the next Ferguson Township regular meeting.
This is Tier, I second that.
Okay, and then just confirming with the manager, this process that we're using right here to table these two contracts until the next meeting, it's all okay before I call for a vote?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. All right, so then all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion pass.
Sorry, I wanted to move forward with that. It passes, it's okay.
Okay, it's unanimous, or?
It's not unanimous, no, I'm in
4-1.
favor of moving forward with it, but.
Okay, so you're
I'm
saying
also-
no to the tabling, so it's a 4-1. Okay, 4-1 vote, motion passes. Thank you, just for clarity for the minutes. All right, next up, we are at communications to the board. Any communications to the board that anyone would like to share? I'm going to share one. Oh, go ahead, Tiara. Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I'd just like to say that me and Lisa attended the Coffee and Conversations, and I'd like for us to try to promote that more. And I do think that we got some very beneficial information on the body cams, as well as conversations about maybe some future engagements. There we go.
Thanks. That was at Discovery Station, right? Nice,
really,
nice.
really well done. And I
Great.
learned a lot personally, so it was a good event.
Early morning. It's an early Saturday morning, I'll say. I'll just share one communication of the board. I could have included this in the COG committee reports. I did not. But I do want to mention that there was another discussion in executive committee that Harris Township put forward. The reason I didn't mention it in committee reports is I'm not really sure what the nature of the conversation is. I was trying to figure out, it's something about the meetings, how we're meeting. Are we all happy with how we're meeting? And I was trying to discern, does this mean we don't want to do hybrid meetings? And no, everybody agreed, no, we want to do hybrid meetings. So I'm not really sure what the exact question really was there, but they were looking for kind of our feedback about what we think about the meeting formats. So I'm just kind of, if that comes up in COG, I just thought I'd make sure I mentioned that to everybody to know that that was a discussion. But again, I'm sorry, I'm being sort of nebulous. I'm not quite sure what the discussion was. So if it comes up, that was that. Any other communications to the board?
Madam Chair, I did receive an email from a resident that had interest in making a comment on an earlier agenda item, but was unavailable to attend. So if possible, I'll go ahead and read that email now to the Board of Supervisors.
Sure, thanks.
Yep, no problem. To the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors, I respectfully ask that you not grant permission to cut down the large pitch pine on Farmstead Lane. To do so would be to reward a faulty process. The Planning Commission's approval to remove the tree contradicts the wishes of neighboring residents as well as the recommendations of the Tree Commission, the Township Arborist, and other staff. It is against the stated values of Ferguson Township itself as an Arbor Day Tree City, USA. We are in a climate emergency and need all the large trees we have, especially where people live. Several small saplings are not replacement for a mature tree still in the prime of its life. We don't have time for the small trees to grow up. We must save what we have now. It is within the board's power not to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation. Please exercise this power. Sincerely, Mr. Randy Hudson, Ferguson Township. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Centuries. Okay, if there's no other communications to the board, we'll move on to calendar items. We've got our regular meetings and then our Arbor Day event announced there. And I will also add, I didn't say it during the Public Works Director's report, I'll add it now, that the mobility study for Pine Grove Mills, they had their open house. Was it just yesterday? I'm not sure. Very recently. Was it yesterday? Okay. Yesterday. And the plan that McCormick Taylor came up with is phenomenal. It's just a beautiful, beautiful plan. So that open house was great. The presentation was wonderful, and the board will be seeing that plan in the near future. So thanks again, Dave, for the work on that. It was really just, I've heard feedback just in that short amount of time on how happy folks are with that. It's really great. So, okay. Looks like we're to our favorite moment in the evening. It's time for our adjournment. So I'll take a motion to adjourn. If there's no
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
All right.